Welcome to It's a Woman's World, where we'll meet achieving women making a difference in our community. I'm Carolyn Bruna. Our guest is Shari Hammond, businesswoman and co-founder of Shari's Promise. Welcome, Shari.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, I'm happy that you're here. And actually, I'd like to start with telling people how I got to meet you. And I was actually looking online at the Daily Record for important women who I could invite to the show. And I saw your name as founder, co-founder of Shari's Promise. And this is what it said. The Daily Record has identified 50 leading women for their tremendous accomplishments so far in their career. The leading women are all aged 40 or younger, and were selected by a panel of judges based on professional experience, community involvement, and their commitment to inspiring change. Well, that's certainly impressive. Yeah,
that's great.
Yeah.
That's
So
great.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And you said there's a ceremony that follows this?
Actually, this Thursday. So this Thursday evening in Baltimore.
Oh, wonderful.
So there'll be an awards banquet.
An awards banquet. Oh, that's great.
I'm very excited.
Yeah.
And honored.
Oh, yeah. And also, I know you through your co-founder, Karen Pisley,
Yes.
who was an architect and was on talking about a little bit about Shari's Promise and a little bit about architecture. So that was fun too.
She's brilliant. Yeah.
That's great. That's great.
phenomenal.
Now I know you're a former hairstylist and a businesswoman.
Yes.
And I guess a story that led to your passion to founding Shari's Promise. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your story? And Shari's Promise being a child sexual abuse prevention cause.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
Yes.
tell us how it all started, if you can. Yeah.
Well, like you said, I was a hairstylist. I've been a hairstylist for 20 years, and I owned my own salon for the last 10 of those years. And during the time, my daughter, I had 3 children, and I've got a daughter who, at the time, was in high school, and she went to prom, and on her way, when she came home from prom, she had been drinking. And just like most parents, I was terribly disappointed. She was underage drinking, and she was an honors student, and how could you do this? And how is that going to look? And then there was this eerie silence in the room, the kind of silence that you just know it just didn't feel right to me. And I looked over at her, and she just broke out into tears and was sobbing. And I walked over to her and I put my arm around her, and she was stomping her feet, and she was crying, and she said, I don't want him to go to jail, I don't want him to go to jail. And I was like, who? And I thought for sure something had happened at prom. And she said, Daddy. And I was like, oh my God, well, what happened? And she proceeded to tell me that she had been being sexually abused by her biological father since she was 8 years old. And she was trying to find a way to tell me. No, she went to her dad's every other weekend and every Thursday night. We had been divorced since she was 2. And of course, now that I know what I know, in retrospect, I wouldn't have allowed this to go down. But what happened is he would take her to school Monday morning, and then she would have school, and then I would pick her up after work, so I wouldn't see her till like 6. So the abuse would occur over the weekend, but then she had all of life, for her world, her school, all of Monday, and then I would see her after the fact. So it's a little bit more challenging to ask the appropriate questions and find out how her weekend was, and really kind of get the full effect.
Perhaps get the cues that you would have gotten had you seen her immediately following some problem.
Exactly, that's right. And so in knowing that and hearing that, and after, of course, the devastation of that, it was so much more devastating to me. Now I say that, of course, not really knowing that that's fact, but I am a survivor of childhood sexual abuse, and my stepfather served 10 years for the abuse that I endured, and my whole family knew this, including my ex-husband. He was with me. We grew up together. He completely knew. It was devastating on so many levels. But after I called the police and her dad never did once deny it. He admitted it right up front and pleaded guilty in court and went to jail. And after the dust had settled from that, I went on a quest, trying to find out, like, how in the world could I not have seen this? How did I not know?
Yeah, because of all parents, you, being a survivor,
Exactly.
would be more attuned, you would think. And so then how can people who are not so attuned be able to get clues that you couldn't even get?
And that's exactly what I thought. So when I went on this quest, I found Darkness to Light, which is a national nonprofit organization based out of South Carolina that has a curriculum for people like me that are interested in making a difference in the way of childhood sexual abuse prevention, that they can facilitate this particular curriculum. So I went down, viewed it, witnessed it, and became an authorized facilitator. So now that's what I do. So Shari's Promise is actually the umbrella company, and we use any avenue we can get to bring prevention, because all of the things that I learned were all of the things that would have saved my daughter. So
Can I ask you how your daughter is doing now?
yeah, she's actually a junior in college. And she's doing wonderfully. She's doing very well. She's very open. She is a sexual assault peer counselor on campus. So she goes to fraternities and sororities and speaks about prevention of sexual assault. And then they're going to have a new program with childhood sexual abuse, because there's a lot of teachers at Towson. A lot of going to be teachers at Towson.
Good. So she's also using the experience for good and turning other people around and helping.
Yes, yeah, and she really assists me. We had a public training last week, and my daughter came, and at the end, when we kind of allowed there to be open discussion, somebody asked me a question, and I turned to her, and she was very willing and very open. It was like a panel discussion at that point. So she's very open and very available, and it's very helpful.
Yeah, yeah. Oh my goodness. So your inspiration for Shari's Promise was your actual experience, and so now you're really in there helping other people. Now, I didn't understand first whether you are helping, and I remember when I interviewed Karen as well, are you actually teaching the children, or are you teaching the adults?
Ideally, we'd like to teach adults, because we'd like to take the responsibility out of the hands of children, because it's very challenging for like a 4-year-old to fend off sexual advances from an adult. So now it needs to be both. We really need to be able to do both. But right now, it's the adults that have no language, no skills whatsoever on how to, one, see, put preventative measures in place, whether it be in their home or any other organization that their children attend, as well as how to recognize these signs, like the signs that I was talking about with my daughter. Now that I know what I know, wow, there were a lot of signs that I missed. And I missed because part of it was me thinking I had my own survivor glasses on, and so I thought that was just me making that up. Just because that happened to me doesn't mean that's happening to her. But the other ones are, she was almost too perfect. She never really did a lot of rebelling. This whole drinking episode was new. There was not anything that, and you should expect some developmental rebellion, with your teenagers. She was always, really academic and wanting to be perfect, wanting everything to be perfect. And that is a beautiful mask, so that nobody ever inquires any deeper about anything that's going on with you. So if you'd like to hide something, if you have something to hide, that's a perfect way to do it.
Wow. And you think this is the perfect child, and I guess you don't question them. Is that what it is? Right,
that's right. And so with this training, what we do is we teach adults how to prevent, how to recognize the signs, and then finally how to react responsibly if the unthinkable does occur. So, for example, when we were always taught like how to respond to a fire, exactly what to do, or when children break their arm, you don't overreact as a parent. You just calmly take a deep breath, you go over, you do what needs to be done. But when this happens, it is so mind-boggling that you cannot wrap your mind around it, that a lot of people get into that fight, flight, or freeze mode. They get into freeze, and they don't do anything. And so we've got generations of children that have grown up where nobody has ever had their, taken their side and spoken up for them, because the adults unfortunately didn't know how to respond to it.
Right.
They, one, didn't know what to say, so there was a lot of because their mind, they can't wrap their mind around it, so they deny it. Like, oh, that couldn't have happened.
Right,
That
it's not wouldn't happen to my family, to my child,
or it couldn't be that man or that
spouse.
woman. That woman or that man would never do something like that.
Right.
So they take that denial on. So what we teach is exactly what to say in the face of this, how to react, and then how to respond to it, what to do next, how to report it, exactly how things go on, what happens.
Can you give us a few more clues of when people see something happening, or not see it but feel that something might happen, what should they be alert for, what should they be aware of? What are the clues or the cues that an adult would notice in a child, in addition to the perfect child?
Yeah, so definitely that too perfect kind of behavior is one, and it should be questioned. You should expect some form of rebellion, in their, especially in their teen years.
Okay.
And even tween years, really. That 11, 12.
Which is a difficult age anyway for kids.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. Also, there are some physical signs. Urinary tract infections are a huge sign. If you've got a child who is constantly having urinary tract infections, that should be looked into a little bit further. Rashes around the genital area, that's again another big sign. Acting out in sexual behavior or with sexual language that is they're way too young for, that should be questioned.
Inappropriate sexual language, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, like in one of our training videos, a nurse speaks about how a child, one of her patients, an adult, came to her and said, my son is humping me from behind. That's just unusual behavior. And come to find out, he was being sexually abused outside of the home. But these kind of behaviors are what brings this topic up.
And actually, you mentioned the son, which, right away it comes to mind that it's a daughter or a girl, but you're right, of course, it can be both sexes, boys as well.
In fact,
and actually, what's in the news right now happening with Penn State and now another university, my goodness.
I know.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it's much higher than these statistics. The statistics currently are 1 in 4 girls and 1 in 6 boys will be sexually abused before their 18th birthday. And honestly, I think 1 in 3 girls is really what's coming up. That's kind of bubbling up. I don't exactly know a source to be able to source it, but I think that's probably more realistic, as well as this is only numbers that have been reported. These are incidents that have been reported. That's where the statistics are coming from. So, with sexual abuse, unfortunately, a lot of people don't tell. So they're not accurate. They're higher than that, realistically. And especially with boys, because there's a stigma. Boys are afraid. Does that mean that I'm a homosexual? Does that mean that I'm, and they don't come forward for these reasons, when it has nothing to do with homosexual or heterosexual. It has to do with power, and it has to do with preying on vulnerable children. And unfortunately, that makes boys not step up and speak out. As well as there's a stigma of embarrassment on the adult's part, because this is a boy child.
Yes, exactly. And I have read that about its power. It's not sexual, although it's sexual, it's not really the sexual thing. It's more of the power that they're putting. Very interesting. It's really very sad. And as we see from the news, it is hidden, and so many people who even see it, then there's a law that if somebody sees something, they are under laws have to report it, right?
In Maryland, there is not everyone is not mandated to report. There are only certain people that are mandatory reporters, and that's counselors, therapists, teachers, certain professions. But it's not everyone.
It's not everyone who should. Although they should, but they're not under the mandate of the law to do it.
Right. That's right.
Wow.
So there won't be
some
consequences for them not reporting.
I see. But I guess some states do have that law, though.
Yes, they do. Some do. I'm not exactly sure which one of them, but I know Maryland does not.
Okay.
Right now.
Maybe that'll change too.
Yeah,
soon.
we'll see.
We'll have more discussion. Let me just take a short break.
Great.
We'll break for a short public service announcement.
Coming home can be hard if you're a veteran of Iraq or Afghanistan. You may feel like you're all alone, but you're not alone. At IAVA.org, your fellow vets are all around you. Join our free online community, get the resources you need, and connect to other vets who know where you're coming from. IAVA.org. We've got your back.
Welcome back to It's a Woman's World. We're speaking with Shari Hammond, co-founder of Shari's Promise, a program for child sexual abuse prevention. Hi, Shari. Let's continue. We're on a heavy topic here. Yeah. But I wanted to ask you to give us, we've been discussing it, but actually give me the definition. How is child sexual abuse defined?
It's defined as any sexual act between either an adult and a child, or between an adult, an older youth and a child. So it could be a sibling, an older cousin, it could be a mother, a father, a grandparent, an aunt, an uncle. Any sexual act between a child and any number of these that can be adults, or they can be older youth or teens, or another child. It could be another child that's only a couple of years older maybe, but is more powerful than that other youth. So it's any time that another youth is exercising their power over another in a sexual manner. That could be considered sexual abuse as well.
Any type, so it's everyone needs to be careful or be on the alert for everything they see with their children.
That's right. This goes beyond normal experimentation among young children. This is more about power. When there's an older youth dominating a younger child in a sexual way, that's sexual abuse. Even though that is not the ideal adult male young girl sexual abuse scenario.
Right.
But sexual abuse could be perpetrated by a number of people. People that look very normal. Adult men, females, it could be a mother, it could be a father, aunt, uncle, cousin, grandparents.
And as you said, it's power, it's not necessarily a sexual act, it's a powerful act.
It's a sexual act as well.
Right, yes, but it's not derived from that as much, it's stimulated by power as well.
Right, because we don't want to look at sexual abuse as a heterosexual or a homosexual experience. Because that's not at all what it is.
Right. Gosh, yeah. And then what is the societal impact on this?
Well, alcoholism, drug addiction, which we have a lot of that right now. There are 40 million survivors of childhood sexual abuse in the United States right now. So we've got a high level of alcoholism and drug addiction. We've got a high rate of depression and bipolar disorder, OCD. How many Americans right now are being treated for some kind of depression or bipolar disorder? We've got cutting, which is a new teen behavior.
Isn't it? Yeah.
So that could be a sign.
An outgrowth of some type of something that's happened to a child that could have been a sexual.
That's right. Absolutely. I mean, there's rage that they're trying to release something. So the cutting is another form, which is major. And then suicide, unfortunately. We lose a lot of people from suicide. And a lot of that can be traced back to childhood sexual abuse.
Sexual abuse, yeah. And this is a question that just made. Do the abusers usually, does a child who has been abused become an abuser necessarily?
I do believe that may happen. I don't believe, though, that that's a cause.
That's not, okay.
I can speak for myself as a survivor. Like, that would never occur to me to do that, because I know what the impact would be. So I don't know what the cause of that is. But I do know that they do, there are statistics around violent crime and violent rape and childhood sexual abuse. So violent rapists, they have reported that the majority of them have been sexually abused. So there is some link with that. It looks like violence is a big connector.
Yeah, I can see that. Forgotten. Let's talk about prevention. You said you have tips for prevention, and that's very important.
I really do. Yes, it is very important.
Yes.
They say that 90% of children who have been sexually abused know and trust their perpetrator. 90%, that's huge. We're not talking about the man in the park. We're talking about somebody who already has the trust of the child and the child's family. So because of that, we give our children to people with blind trust. You know, that's already established. The trust is already established. So the only way really to prevent this from occurring would be if we limit the amount of time that our children spend alone with one adult. So if you limit the amount of time that one adult and one child is together alone, then that greatly reduces the risk. So, for example, recently one of my sons just started kindergarten, and at school he was being asked to have an evaluation. He had an evaluation, so the teacher came out and asked, you know, can I take him? And so here she's taking my child down the hall, and I said, well, where are you going to be taking him? And she opened the door and, you know, motioned through, it'll be down that hall. And I said, oh, okay, was there anyone else back there? And she's like, no. And as she's shutting the door and taking my son, no, it was just going to be her and my son alone. And I said, you know, I'm sorry, but I'm a childhood sexual abuse prevention specialist, and this really makes my son vulnerable. Do you mind if you must go back there and there's not another adult back there, leaving the door open and make it observable? And she was like, okay, and she did it. But that's not something that's typical. But unfortunately, this leaves our children vulnerable. So, and we can put those same type of things around our children. So we go to a family reunion, for example. If we see my nephew alone with an uncle in the den playing video games, and it's just the uncle and the nephew alone, that would be an opportunity for me as a responsible adult to just make sure that everything's okay. Do you guys need anything to drink? You know, what needs to be done? Because these are the scenarios that sexual abuse occurs in family environments, family reunions. If you speak to most childhood sexual abuse survivors, it has happened in an environment like this. So if adults were very present to the possibility, and I'm not saying don't trust everyone, this going from an entirely different angle, just make sure that children are always safe, period. Not from a place of distrust, but just from a place of responsibility. Just always walk around and make sure that the children are safe when they're alone with one adult, because unfortunately those are the cases and those are the occurrences.
Oh, that's interesting. It kind of hit me because I wouldn't expect that. A few things, when you were saying that to a teacher, I was thinking, well, what if she was insulted and said, oh, well, you know.
And that's the part that we need to get over. Who cares?
Yeah.
If we can all come from a place of making sure that our children are safe, we will not be offended by something like that.